Hello, friends. Welcome to the podcast. Today I'm talking with my friend Kanchan Prinsloo. If you've ever experienced a major life event in which you've basically removed yourself from everyone that you know and moved to another place, country, um, where you're on your own and you have to figure out who you are and what you're all about and experience that sort of um, ground shaking identity crisis, you're going to want to listen to this show. Kanchan is a coach and she coaches BIPOC leaders, specifically women leaders. And she's based in the Toronto area. And she's such a great woman. I've known her for years and years and years, and our lives just sort of intersect a few times. And every time I do, it's like talking to an old buddy. And I hope you enjoy our conversation and learn some things about leadership and how to close the gap between the head and the heart to be a better leader. Hello, friends. Welcome to season 2 of the Broken Open podcast. I'm Maureen Towns, author, speaker, and expert on finding calm amidst the chaos of helping those you love with mental health and addictions issues. If you like what you hear on this podcast, please be sure to subscribe so that you're the first to know when new episodes are released. And visit MaureenTowns.com to get in touch, to stay current on our programs, Footsteps for Families and Freedom from Intergenerational Trauma, as well as any updates on the book, Broken Open. Enjoy the show. Hi, Kanchan. We're live. How are you doing?
I am great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Maureen, for having me here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So you and I have reconnected after a long time of not being connected. And I'm so glad. And you're doing something completely different than when I knew you, which was healthcare administration. And
Absolutely.
so what are you doing now? Tell us.
So I have, yeah, you're right. It was about 8 years ago, I think, is when we connected in healthcare, when we were doing our master's.
Yes.
And what I've done is since then, I've gone and did my certification in executive coaching,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that it's through the coaching and and quite honestly, the credibility of being external to any organization to have impact. That's as frank as I can get about it, because it's hard to do it from the inside.
Yes.
And at that point, just because I've always had a passion for leadership and seeing good and bad leadership,
Mm-hmm.
in especially in the 26 years I've worked in healthcare, uh, and so doing the executive coaching was important.
Mm.
I've since I started 7 years ago as a coach, I have since then really narrowed my focus
Mm.
to work with women of color, uh, lead other leaders. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a really very, I realize, really tight, narrow niche.
Yes.
And it speaks to me because one of the things I know for sure is that we teach what we most need to learn ourselves. So
Isn't
it's
that
part of
true?
my story. It's my
Yeah.
story as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've been in leadership roles pretty much all your life, I'm going to guess.
Yeah, I was a registered nurse for a year and a half, so
A year and a
just
half.
enough to cause harm. Um,
Love it. Yeah, me too.
I know enough to go, oh yeah, I read that somewhere.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so for a year and a half, I was a registered nurse.
Mm-hmm.
Through that, though, as a nurse, I was in management positions from a very young age.
Mm-hmm.
I look back now because as my daughter is 29, and I think, wow, I was in management for 5 years by the time I reached 29. Like it
Yeah.
was quite young. And it was very, yeah, it shaped me. It absolutely shaped me every step of the way. Yeah.
Yeah. That's very cool. And now you work primarily with women of color, like you say, who lead other leaders.
Yeah. So being in Toronto, have the fortune of the handful of women executives that
Mhm.
are of color
Mm.
are usually based sort of in headquarters. You'll see them more sort of in that space. And so I get the opportunity in Toronto to have access to, like I said, literally a handful of what feels like people that are in fairly senior positions. And the piece that draws me to executives or very senior leaders, as much as I try and also work with leaders that are high potentials and people that are really driven to move women of color. Um, it's the ripple effect, as you know, the more senior you get, the impact that you can have within an organization is amazing.
Mhm.
So I love being able to work with executive women of color, which I'm fortunate to be able to do.
Fantastic. And you do executive coaching. So you help
Yes.
them to develop their and hone their leadership skills, which includes the development of other leaders, which makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm going to start with a broken open question. Then and then I want to loop back around to some of this leadershipy work that you're currently doing. So, Kanchan, tell me about a time when you experienced some adversity in your life that at the time felt fairly serious and maybe the end of the world, that in hindsight was just such a gift.
Hmm. And I love that question. I absolutely love it because in that single question, you get to the core of a person. So,
Mm,
absolutely love that question. For me, it was in the transition of getting out of healthcare
mm,
and really owning my space in the coaching world. And I'm smiling because I did this. I did the transition in my mind, like it's all about, yep, that makes sense. So really up here and not down here. So up
yes.
here, I was really ticking the boxes, you know. We were moving to London. My husband and I decided when our youngest was off to university, we were going to take the gap year and left career, left all of that so we could set up our practices in the UK.
Mhm.
He happens to he's a British subject, so that was a bit easier to do there. And we love London. We've traveled a lot with our children and we're ready for that shift. But I was, I'd had my master's in leadership. I've got 26 years of experience.
Yes.
I'm a coach. I'm, you know, as I jokingly say, look out, London. You
Yeah.
have no idea who's coming into this world.
Yeah. Yeah.
So really sort of this sense of who I was, because I had it all planned. I ticked everything off.
Mhm.
Um, so we landed in London, and one of the pieces that is a part of me is that there's a scarcity mindset
Mm.
when it comes to money.
Okay.
In fact, for us to get to London, we set aside money in a bank account, and I was basically, let's see how long this lasts, and if it's done, we got to go back because I cannot drain our other funds. And bless my husband who, Ian just knows this about me. Okay, got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and as soon as we got to London, things started to really land for me.
Mm.
I was so busy in the doing of
Mm.
getting us there that by the time I woke up the first night in London and started to realize, right, I actually don't have any family around here. I've got no friends, no colleagues, no network, don't know a soul.
Mm.
And I'm on what feels like a little bit of a precarious financial situation. so
Mhm.
so it was starting to land, and as we were going out in London, started to realize that all the things we wanted to do, what I had in my very methodical Excel spreadsheet, financially set up what needed to be done, turn around and get there and realize, oh, even in the 6 months since I've done the spreadsheet, the prices are a bit higher and what was very fascinating is that I started to see myself
Ah,
started to get smaller and smaller. So the energy I came with full of possibility, now I look at it with a bit of naivety, but that energy, which is fantastic, it's like childbirth, like it's like yes, and then it's like right, that's what this is. But that got me to London, but I found myself getting smaller
yeah.
and smaller and smaller, and living in like fear crept in, fear of who am I? What am I? And then all of a sudden started to really realize the sort of the bubble I had lived in. I had privilege when I was growing up, but I had a position. I've had, we've got the safety of, first of all, Canada. Canada's got a very safe country. Alberta, much as it's been through booms and busts, for the most part, being in healthcare, it didn't really affect me. I had security.
Mhm.
And then you've got Calgary that's got this. So really, you could reach up and feel the safety. The
Mhm.
bubble was pretty close to us. And
Mhm.
and all of a sudden, I was faced with the reality of, um, like, who am I here?
Mhm.
I don't have anyone I don't have at that point, an assistant that would just take the work that I was doing because I was busy over here. And I was like, and I remember, I remember at one point, my husband saying to me, going, okay, don't manage me. Don't like, don't, because I am used to, I love the act of, let's get all this done. And, and what happens is, as I got smaller, my old destructive habits of control and please just kick in that much more.
Sure.
So I got to a point where we were also having a lot of company. So I was entertaining a lot,
Mm.
which isn't my nature as well. So a lot of things were starting to happen that wasn't something I normally did. And so I was getting further and further away from who I thought I was
Right.
or who I was comfortable with.
Yep.
Um, and then I got to a point where I showed up outwardly as disgruntled, as
Mhm.
angry, as just short.
Yes.
That's not the B word I was originally thinking of, but that's the like it was just nasty. Like I was quick. And I've always been sort of, I can be quick, I can slice and dice with my words. And I'm just like, and so it gets to a point where I was like, okay, we moved in March for my birthday, which was in September. I'm going to gift myself a coach. I want to have a
Ah.
coach. And in a way that I do, I researched who is the top coach in London, and I'm going to give that person a call because
Yeah.
I want the best of the best.
Yeah.
And I remember at that point, um, I go, okay, I'm going to interview her and find out I could work with her for a day. And at that point, it was £1,500 for the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
And the only reason I chose to work with her in the interview with her, she had me do an exercise, which is where it really took me down to how broken I really was.
Oh.
She did an exercise of, okay, so what is it that you want? And then she started peeling back. Okay, so what if you don't get this? What if you go back to Calgary? What
Uh,
if you, and I am in tears throughout the
yeah.
entire time
Yeah.
because I don't want to go back. I don't want that. I don't want, and it's like, okay. And I didn't realize it at that point,
Yeah.
until that point, that, yeah, I'm not living the life I have wanted.
Mm.
And I definitely am not ready to pack this up to go back to Calgary because I haven't even started.
Mm.
And so it was that realization that I went, okay, this is the coaching. I did a 1-day coaching session with her, and it was just transformative in the sense that it's not that she allowed me to feel what it would be like to experience the life I have wanted.
Mm.
Um, and that was just I hadn't even left the sofa, like it was, well, actually it wasn't a sofa, it was a chair. Sounded a bit like a psychologist, but it was very much a chair.
Mm. Mhm.
And it was that sense of um, realizing at that moment that I had just continuously questioned who I was. Was I
Mm.
worthy enough? What was my value? Could I
Mm.
even do anything? And even in the window from March to September, I remember tapping to a friend of mine in the US, and she said, could you just give me a quick bio, like just a 3-line bio? I was almost in a fetal position trying to go, what can I say? I don't know. I
Mm.
have no idea. Like just not even able to write 3 sentences about who I am.
Mhm.
And no confidence. Like
Mhm.
there was just, And I had gone from what I would say a comfortable space in healthcare
Mhm.
to being, you know, well, who are you today?
Crickets. Yeah, nobody
Yeah.
cares.
And this was no one else. Like it was just all within. And
Yeah.
that was the piece I needed to repair. But it
Yes.
was it was starting to get quite dark by the
Mhm.
time I had gotten to that place, uh, both actually figuratively and physically, because it was getting into the fall, and in London by 3:30 it starts to get dark. So
Mhm.
you are starting to go into this cocoon, and but it was a really powerful. When I reflect back on that, it was that experience that has brought me to where I'm at today, which has
Mm.
completely shifted both my experience, but who I serve and how I serve.
Mm.
Yeah.
Amazing. I love that you put yourself into that situation, and I relate to it on a smaller level, moving from Ontario to Alberta. There was a little bit of a culture shock.
Yeah.
As you know, Ontario's got
Yeah.
a bit of a different feel than Alberta. And nobody cared. I had gone from, like you say, a bit of a safety of my family living like, and my friends. Everybody knew who I was. The name was familiar. I was it was I was very positional. I knew who I was by my position to a larger extent than I realized until I got out of that and came to Alberta. And I remember when I'd go for a job interview here, people would ask me, "What have you done in Alberta?" Like
Right.
everything before that didn't count. And I got fairly chippy too. I went for an interview in public health, which was, you'll love this, with Mary McIntyre. You know Mary McIntyre, another manager in healthcare. And I went in there was so chippy. I sat down in the chair for the interview and put my arm behind the chair and leaned back. Like I like my body language was just like,
Yeah.
and she asked the question, what have you done in healthcare in Alberta? And I think I went, like oh, poor Mary. Poor Mary. Needless to say, I did not get that job. Um, because I felt the same way. I'm like, really? Like, who am I here?
Yeah.
Who am I? And you start to question everything.
Well, and I would say, you know, what I found really interesting is questioning who you are. And for me, there was the nuance of, and England, I mean, come on, everyone's been, for most people have been to London and they all speak English. There's a little bit of an accent, but it's that small sort of bit of, there's a cultural difference. And
Yes.
and and that's countries. And what you're saying is absolutely true within Canada. Having
Yes.
lived in raised in Saskatchewan, lived in Alberta, born in, my kids were born and raised there, and coming to Toronto, it's like, wow, this is, and put London in between it,
Yes.
completely different in terms of experience. And you have to accommodate for that.
Yeah.
And how do you accommodate for that when you're questioning who you are
Yeah,
in this
absolutely.
environment?
And you're fearful. And
Yeah,
you feel a little like I say, like nobody cares about who Kanchan is. Nobody, like you come from an environment where you walk into a room and people sat up straight. You'd been in a healthcare administration and you had a position there that afforded you some sense of identity.
yeah,
And then you left all that behind and showed up in a
yeah.
new country and nobody really, and you were
Oh,
busy. You were busy like working out a preference by being playing a hostess
yeah.
almost full time. And man, I can imagine. You describe this when you do this, I can feel it. It's like, "Ooh, I can feel that," and get a little chippy and a little dark.
And it was, it's interesting. Um, I part of me was angry at not knowing who I was.
Mhm.
Part of me was able to focus it externally and
Mhm.
kind of go, well, this whole situation is weird, this
Mhm.
blah blah blah, all that stuff. And the reality of it is, by the time I was able to finally go quiet and understand that I actually know who I am,
Mhm.
I just haven't shown up that way in such a long time.
Yeah. What was in your way?
Myself.
Yeah.
Part of it is bad habits come from bad mindsets. My mindset of who I was based on a very strong cultural upbringing of pink and blue.
Mm-hmm.
What our roles were, and I mean, I grew up in Saskatchewan, but the reality is, I remember vividly telling my mom at one point, because she was, "Well, go make your brother's beds." And I'd be like, and I'm the youngest of three, and I have two older brothers, and I'd be like, why would I make their beds? They're older than I am. They got years more experience than me. Like, why am I doing this? And so culturally,
Right.
sort of being placed in positions that made me question whether I was capable, by no intention
Yeah.
of my parents. They're parenting the way they've been parented.
Mm.
And but that was just a small example of a mindset that was limiting for
Yeah.
me. There's many mindsets they've given me that has been quite expansive, but that was an example of it. So I was already at the core questioning
Yeah.
like who I am.
Yeah.
And I was able to shift that in
Yeah.
healthcare because I was able to move positions, and you know what, you get rewarded for things that you do. So I know who I am because I loved your language around, by the position I was in,
Mm-hmm.
or I've forgotten how you said it, but that was, and I was like, that's exactly it.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden you strip that away,
Mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden all the deep questions that, or not even questions, even if there was an inkling of eh, you know do I know enough,
Mm-hmm.
strong enough, can I do this, all those things, of course they're going to rise to the top.
Sure. I had a lot of fear when I left healthcare as well. Again, now I'm going to be a consultant.
Mhm.
And I felt the same way you did. I watched people come into healthcare where I was managing and say the same thing I'd been saying, except that everyone sat up and went, "Wow, that's powerful. What a good idea." And I thought, "What?" You know, so because I'm internal, because I'm a manager, your manager in particular, it just goes in one ear and out the other. Here she goes again. And yet a consultant says it and it's, whoa. And I'm like, okay, I want that job.
Yeah.
I want that job. Right. So I'm going to go do that. And then I did the same thing you did. I sat around, what if they find out that I really don't know, that whole imposter
Right.
syndrome feeling. Then I start to question now. Yeah, it's kind of, I relate to that. One of the things on your website, which, makes sense now that you've told that story, is that you really emphasize that
Mhm.
people need to know who they are. Why is that so important?
One of the strong beliefs that I hold is if we don't know where we come from, we will have a hard time finding where we're going.
Mm.
So knowing who you are has that linkage to what's behind us in
Mm-hmm.
that sense, be it lineage, be it just one generation. Knowing who you are allows us to navigate the world through our truth
Mm.
versus outwardly and going, okay, that person, oh, I should, I would, I could, I
Mm.
maybe. And so it's really getting clear with what the truth is. And one of our truth is, it was an epiphany for me that with all the work that I do, my real responsibility is to make sure that I am clear, my channel is clear, or that my sense of being is clear, that I can hear myself,
Mm-hmm.
so that I can see whether I am, is this piece of work true for me? Is this
Mm-hmm.
piece of work what I want to be doing? As an
Mm-hmm.
example, um, when I say child, but when my adult child comes to me with a question, it's, you know, listening enough to say, are they looking for an answer, or are they looking to be questioned
Mm.
a bit deeper?
Mm-hmm.
And so, whereas before, if they come for a question, I'd be like, oh, yeah, yeah, because
Mm-hmm.
I love I'm right up there. Let me give you some answers. I got a lot of wisdom in my head. Let me just dump that on you. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is a
Yeah.
hilarious space for me to be in. And at the same time, I'm aware that as we know who we are,
Mm-hmm.
uh, unpacking that
Mm-hmm.
gives us the most power possible
Mm-hmm.
in the world to navigate the world.
Mm.
And I feel so fortunate that being able to help women of color who statistically enough research shows are the lowest on the leadership rung,
Mm-hmm.
and yet the most potent, because they have a sense, they've got the qualities of leadership that's being asked for.
Mm.
As you know, the Athena doctrine and all that they talk
Mm.
about women and what all the qualities.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, when I say women, I'm talking more feminine qualities as a
Feminine
general
qualities.
term.
Sure. Yeah.
They've got that along with, as women leaders, along with the deep felt sense of, for example, the importance of community, family,
Mm-hmm.
and bringing the history, making sure that the history we bring and that the decisions that are made are for 7 generations ahead of us. And,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of awareness of what's the support that's needed.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we get that? By knowing who we are,
Mm-hmm.
leading self first, as
Mm-hmm.
you and I were taught in our
Mm-hmm.
leadership programs, leading self first before you can lead a team, before you can have impact in an organization or have, systemic changes that can happen. So that's the anchor to what I believe that I've seen that I not only do I believe that I've actually seen have the greatest impact for a leader, be it a woman of color or any leader for that
Mm-hmm.
matter.
That's amazing. I love what you're saying. What I'm hearing you say is that our past, if we're looking at our past and how it shapes us, we become more powerful. And I tend to look back to my past, not from a place of power, but from a place of, oh, that's why I behave that way. That's why I need to change that. But what I'm hearing you say, you're framing it a little bit differently. And I'm also hearing you say that when we get really quiet and we get tuned into ourselves, there's a knowing there that can be a great guide. And I had a woman say to me the other day, yeah, but when I'm in chaos and when I'm in fear, I don't trust my gut.
Mm,
And it sounds like for you, when you were in fear and becoming smaller and smaller, this woman, this masterful coach, it sounds like, helped you to dig into yourself
mhm.
to a place that you knew, at your core that you could trust.
Yeah.
And you talked about too, when you got to England, you're good at living here, not so much here. How do you take women like us who are very cognitive, comfortable up here,
Mhm.
thinking and managing? How do you get them here?
Uh, the the biggest journey most leaders have is the distance between head to heart, as you know.
Yeah.
And so part of that is embodiment work. Part of that is, and the embodiment work, what I mean by that is knowing your body,
Yeah.
bringing it here. And that body in some respects is, all the mindfulness work that you hear about, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's rubbing your fingers together enough to just be able to feel the ridges of your, the imprints, your ridges of your fingertips. And it's, what do I need to do to disrupt this because it's overpowered so much of my life?
Mm-hmm.
And how do I disrupt it and create little habits, little patterns to disrupt, knowing that once for example, if I work with someone, it's like, okay, what is true? So knowing what that truth is. So that's a big, uncovering. It's a big step. And quite honestly, doesn't take much. It
Mm.
truly doesn't take much, because as human beings, all we want is to be seen and heard.
Mm-hmm.
So to be able to do that is really powerful. So being able to identify what those things are for you, and then second of all, taking the small steps, the small actions to disrupt when I know this is coming down the line.
Mm.
Like if I'm thinking about, okay, what does my day look like? Right. That one may be a trigger for me.
Mm-hmm.
What can I do to set myself up knowing that something could happen here that is going to take me down a path that I know isn't going to serve what I'm actually here to do in this
Mm.
lifetime, in this
Mm-hmm.
moment. And so it's bringing awareness to the whole spectrum of what I want to be doing, and then as well just really bringing an awareness to where am I going, what can I do to disrupt it, and then really take time to reflect from a place of gratitude.
Mm.
Always reflecting from a place of gratitude. I was just listening to someone today that was, the research showing that people that come from a place of gratitude or are grateful are 25% more healthy, productive. There's just a whole host of things. Um, and the gratitude piece comes from, you're not running away from something, but you're running, towards, and it's towards the piece that you're wanting to have in your life or more of.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see by the, you resonate with this on so many
Yeah,
levels.
yeah, yeah, for sure. You're singing my song for sure.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can hear it. And so, yeah, so it's how do you get out of your head and into your heart? Part of it is body work. Um, movement, movement as in, it doesn't even take much. It's just even thinking about, I'm just going to, rotate my shoulders is
Mm-hmm.
enough to go, right, I went from here to within here. Oh, where is that in the shoulders that I'm feeling that pain?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm immediately going back into my body. The other thing that we don't do a lot of is, talk about our emotions. So an exercise that we can do is actually call out an emotion, and the average number of emotions a person can call out is 5.
Yeah.
So having the spectrum of emotions and really honing in on what is it that's happening. You're brushing your teeth.
Yeah.
Like what is it what's the emotion that's rising up right now?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
just something. It's practicing. It's
It is.
literally practicing to get connected again.
Yes, it is. I love it. I talk about emotional literacy quite a bit.
Mm.
Um, and I mean, it's emotional intelligence. It's, emotionally intelligent leadership. You're talking about empathy and feminine aspects in leadership, been able to connect and to, consider. And I think, oh God, we do the same work, you and I actually. You just do it in a corporate space and I do it with family in crisis, but it's really very, very similar.
Right.
I mean,
I'm not surprised.
no, I'm not
And
either, but it's just so interesting to listen to you talk because I'm just like, uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. Yeah, tick, tick,
I
tick,
could
tick, tick.
tell.
Yeah.
I'm watching your face going, oh yeah, this is resonating on so many levels. What's interesting
Yeah.
is that we do the work, and for me, the underpinning is from our leadership work that you and I
Mm-hmm.
both had a couple of decades in leadership,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of go, what what is needed in this
Mm-hmm.
world right now? What type of, what as at a humanity level is needed?
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that anchors us both in
Mm-hmm.
sort of going, hmm, okay,
Yeah.
this could be of service. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
this not only could be, it is of service.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. I love it.
Yes.
I love it. And I love that your focus is women of color. And I love the why that's
Mm,
your focus. And this is your background. Um, this is your place of knowing. And you talk about in your website, you were fortunate, you said in your website, not to experience racism until you were about 11. And so you were somewhat, yeah, you had some cultural influences on gender and
mhm.
and your role, but you didn't really experience racism. Now, here's a question for you. What if someone isn't visibly of color? Like, what if they're
Mhm.
of a minority, but visibly are not?
Mhm.
No one knows.
Right.
Does it matter
Does what matter?
that they're a visible minority, or is it enough that they just feel like
So
a
that,
minority?
Right. That's a great question, because I would say from a diversity perspective, we are looking at gender, and we are looking at, when I, sorry, gender, sexuality. There's a whole host of things that, so I could be, for example, um, my sexuality. That's not something somebody else would see
Mhm.
about me,
Mhm.
but do I feel like I belong
Mhm.
is all the same.
Mhm.
So outwardly, I may not look at. So the challenge, not the challenge, but the visibility piece, be it gender, and especially in, the intersectionality that I live in, the gender and, as well, race, that's visible,
Mhm.
and people can see that, and that's what's being, in the world that I live in, is marginalized. And there's a lot of people being marginalized that you
Mhm.
can't see,
Mhm.
to your point, that
Mhm.
you wouldn't outwardly see it. I
Mhm.
am, I definitely have that, experience. And I would say as well, when it comes down to having that, visibility, um, invisibility, I actually have come from such a place of privilege
Mm.
that the two factors that are, you know, working against me in the current space is that I am a woman in corporate space. I am a woman and I am of color.
Mhm.
Um, but I come from a place of privilege economically, my
Mhm.
age, my sexuality, there is so much that I
Mhm.
have, education that serves me.
Mhm. That the
And
world is
and
applauding you for.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
there is, but yes, I would say from a diversity space, there's many levels that we have, and diversity means that we're talking about the uniqueness of who we are,
Mhm. Mhm.
and that we acknowledge and celebrate the uniqueness of who we are, be it sexuality, be it gender,
Mhm.
be it
Mhm.
race, as examples. And inclusion is having the sense of belonging
Mhm.
in that. And I would say that's the stretch right now. You
Right.
know, yeah, I would say that's probably the bigger, stretch. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what I definitely. Yeah.
Well, I hear what you're saying. There's a lot of ways to be um, marginalized.
Hmm.
There's a lot of ways that we are in a minority or prejudiced against, or the system is not set up to support, you know, a lot of ways of being. And I also hear from you that you're working with female leaders of color, and it makes perfect sense that that would be your niche, because that's what you relate to.
Absolutely.
I work with mothers of children with mental health and addiction primarily. It doesn't mean I can't help others, but primarily that's my focus, because that's I relate
Yeah.
to those individuals
Yeah.
on such a deep, resonant level that, of course, that's my niche. I am the person I wish
Absolutely.
I'd known.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
that's a brilliant way to say it.
Hmm.
When you have taken a journey in your life, or I've
Hmm.
taken my journey, my lived experience,
Hmm.
and it goes, right, how do I help someone else that does not have to go through what I went through?
Hmm.
And how do I help get that, and really help position them where they feel so empowered, or they feel so strong in themselves
Hmm.
that they can have impact on the surroundings that they want, be it their family,
Hmm.
be it an organization.
Yeah. I look back at my early days in management. It sounds like you were a manager a lot younger than I was. My early days in management, and I say I was running with scissors. Like I really didn't know what I was doing.
Oh,
And I think, oh man, and I think of the same thing as parent with parenting. If I was to do it again, and I'm not going to, I
yeah.
say that with both. If I was going to do it again, and I'm not gonna, but if I was, I would do it so much differently so differently today than I did then, and I made a lot of mistakes, man. Like I did a lot of things that I would like, oh God, ugh, I just, oh, Maureen, and so if you were going to go back and talk to
Mm.
young Kanchan, who's 25
Mhm.
and in a leadership role, and I'm going to guess there was some imposter syndrome there, or maybe not, what would you say to her?
The naivety again.
Yeah, yeah,
The 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 well, let me just share with you the lesson I learned, and it's the wisdom I would give back to my younger self, is that respect is earned and not given. And it's key
yes,
because culturally, I grew up, you were either older or came from a position, like it was either positional power or age that
yeah,
gave you respect. That's just what you got. So
yeah,
being the youngest of the family,
yeah,
like I was punching it with the rest of them, two
scrappy,
older
yeah.
brothers. And so, but then I finally made it. I got the respect. I got it. I got the respect. Well, guess what? Everyone I was leading was much older than I am, and I just thought, well, what I can you give me respect, and it's like, no, no, you earn that,
Hmm.
and that was that I would say is probably one of the biggest lessons I learned. Thankfully, at such a young age.
Mm.
Um, and it was something that I would say is I would that's the wisdom. That would be the wisdom. I can feel it already, kind of like to your point. It's like I cringe
Me too.
at, at what some of the stuff I did. And
Yeah.
when I got called out on it is when I was finally going, and I was pissy about it when I got
Yeah.
called out on it. But I
Yeah.
learned it. Like
Yeah.
you earn respect.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Um, is there anything that you're currently doing, the work that you do, executive coaching, that you want to promote?
Thank you. Thank you for the platform. One of the things that I really am focusing on this year is community and building
Mm.
community. And for me, that is helping, executive coaching may be out of people's price range.
Mhm.
And I know that there is a lot of women leaders of color that are in the beige range, in the middle management
Mhm.
range.
Mhm.
And so I am building leadership circles for women of color.
Nice.
When I say building, that's because the first one will be in September.
Okay.
And what I love about the leadership program in September, right now I've got leadership circles for coaches and women of color, but the one that I really want to work with is the leadership circle for women of color that are just part of it is just wanting to have like-minded conversations
Mhm.
with tools. So I
Yes.
curate them,
Yeah.
and it's small. It's for 8 people.
Nice.
I It's for 8 people, and I will continue to grow community that way. It's all about relationship for me,
Yeah.
small relationships. So that's the one thing that I would love to get the word out for.
So this
It's
is
an
cool. So
application process, but yeah,
a more affordable price point. It's not as expensive as one-to-one coaching with you would be. And there's going to be, I love the idea of the community and small community
yeah.
to start. Now, you talk about building from there. Will these communities all be coming together eventually? Like, or how do you see that going?
So I do see that because that's one of the things that is important. I'm someone who loves to build, and
Mhm.
then I step away.
Yeah.
So it is an opportunity for women of color to continue to support each other
Yeah.
with the cohorts that go through. Yeah.
Awesome. And when you say leaders, middle management, lower management, even, what's the criteria for membership?
So the thing that I look at in the application form is what level of self-awareness do you have right now?
Okay.
The second thing is, do you have a long-term, like, are you going towards something that you are just, if this happened, it would really change my world. So I love
Right.
that sense of excitement
Yeah.
that someone has. And lastly, I would say the membership has a lot to do with how committed are you to do the work that is going to come through the program.
Nice.
So it's not a question of, I mean, and I have every woman leader that I've spoken to are so in spades are committed to do the work.
Yeah.
Like that I haven't seen as a problem.
Yeah.
But that is still a criteria. It's like, there is homework, there is,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
processes that help to, shift your thinking a little bit. That's what I want to do, is disrupt your thinking enough that you can go, oh, okay, hadn't seen that. That's an
Hmm.
interesting thing.
So awareness, drive, and commitment are the
Yeah.
criteria. You don't have to have, letters behind your name. You don't have to be in a formal leadership role, even.
Well, I do want to have people that are leading teams,
Okay, so they need to be
that
in a
are
leadership
leading.
role.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
What if I'm just a
that's
team leader? What if I'm a shift leader?
fantastic. Fantastic. If
Okay.
you have impact on other leaders, that's important, because
Okay.
again, there is a ripple effect that goes beyond you. That
Yes.
to me is what I'm looking for.
Okay. And how do you determine, is there a secret question? And this is level of awareness. How do you determine that?
One of the things that I look for in level of awareness is, do you realize your role in the experiences you have?
Okay. Man, that takes me right back to Royal Roads.
Oh, is that part of it?
Well, it
I don't
reminds
remember.
me of, do you remember Phil Cady's workshop? Or maybe you never had that, but I remember this workshop that he did, and he kept saying, what have you done or not done that has put you exactly where you are today?
Oh,
And he
okay.
would say it
That's
again. Yeah,
it. So we're shout out to Phil.
Phil.
I
And I
didn't.
remember I was listening to him and I'm like, well, yeah, but, and then I'm like, and then he'd say it again. What have you done or not done that has put you exactly where you are right now?
Yeah. So that's ownership, accountability. It's
Yeah, yeah,
awareness.
yeah,
There's so many factors at play.
yeah.
Yeah.
I got to ask that question of the next man I want to date.
Yeah.
Self-awareness
It's
question.
true. It's
It is.
true.
Yeah, it's a big deal. It's hilarious. Well, this is awesome. I'm excited about this community that you're building. I think it's fascinating. I love the niche that you're working with. I I love that you're doing the same work that I am. Essentially, you're using a little bit different language, but you're doing the same thing. Like, this is so fantastic and so needed. So thank you very much for that. And it's been awesome to reconnect as usual. Like,
Thank
I've
you.
always just
Oh,
felt like, oh man, when you meet someone and you're like, mm,
yeah.
I get it. Yeah, we need to talk more. It's like that.
Absolutely. I
Yeah,
wholeheartedly agree.
yeah.
And yeah, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be on your podcast.
Thank you. We'll talk soon.
Sounds good.
Friends, thanks for listening. And if you liked this episode, please be sure to click on the thumbs up below for YouTube and comment. What did you like most? And what do you want to hear more of? I'd love to hear from you. And in case you missed it, the website is maureentowns.com. Bye.